guys, welcome back to Paranormal Princess, the channel for all things ghosts, paranormal and spooky. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, ring the bell. There's a little button, just click it, please. Tea today. Even though it's really hot, I feel like you can never wrong with a bit of tea. So for today's video, we're going to be talking about black-eyed children, which honestly, I started to research it and it honestly is just the creepiest, terrifying thing I've heard in my life. Firstly, I just want to put a few theories out there already. Some say they're vampires, some say they are ghosts, some say they're demons, some say that they are aliens. The alien thing is the thing that creeps me out the most because I don't know what it is for me. Let me know in the comments down below if you feel the same. Aliens scare me so much more than ghosts, but I don't know if it's because I've had so many experiences with ghosts before that it doesn't affect me as much. Just the idea of aliens really. I'm going to read a few stories that I found from Reddit, which I only read about 2 paragraphs of each just because I wanted it to be a surprise when we reach the end. So first of all, I want to talk about a man called Brian Bethel, who he was the first public outing of black-eyed children. His story is the most famous story connected to black-eyed children. It could very well be a legend kind of thing. I actually watched a video and I'll link it down below. I watched a video of him talking about it. To be fair, he looks sincere and I believe what he's saying. So I'm going to start with that story. One night in Abilene, Texas, Bethel left his apartment around 9:30 to drop off a payment for his internet service with Camelot Communications in a Dropbox at an old location of theirs on North 1st Street in a downtown shopping centre. The centre was next to a $1.50 movie theatre, which on this particular night was showing the movie Mortal Kombat. Bethel passed the theatre and parked in an empty space at the centre where he could use the light from the theatre's marquee to help him write his cheque. Then someone knocked on his driver's side window. A little surprised, Bethel turned to find 2 boys, aged somewhere between 10 and 14, he guessed. One boy was taller than the other and he was wearing a pullover hoodie with a grey checked pattern. He had olive-coloured skin and curly medium-length brown hair. The second boy had pale skin with a trace of freckles and pale orange hair. He was wearing a hooded shirt that was light green in colour, and he looked around nervously as the other boy talked to Bethel. Bethel's first impression was that they were not related to each other and that they were going to ask him for money. Then Bethel's feelings on the whole matter shifted to an unreasonable fear for no apparent reason. The tall boy smiled, which Bethel stated, quote, chilled my blood, end quote. As Bethel explained it, quote, I could feel fight or flight responses kicking in, something I knew instinctually was not right, but I didn't know what it could possibly be, end quote. Bethel rolled down the window slightly enough to talk to the boys. The tall boy smiled wider, showing very, very white teeth. The boys wanted to see the movie, but had forgotten their money. They needed a ride home to get the money and wanted Bethel to give them a ride. And while the voice was that of a young boy, something in how he said the words felt wrong. The tall boy was too confident, not acting like a child asking a stranger a favour. He was acting as if Bethel was required to let him in the car, and the question was a mere formality. Bethel hesitated to answer the request. Then he noticed the second boy eyeing him nervously with a mixture of confusion and guilt on his face. Both boys seemed a bit surprised that Bethel had not agreed immediately. The tall boy spoke again, assuring Bethel that they just wanted to go to their house. They were just 2 little boys. Bethel was sure something was wrong, so stalled for time by asking what movie they were going to see. The tall boy said they wanted to see Mortal Kombat, of course. Bethel looked back at the theatre and realised that the last showing of the movie for the night had started an hour previously, so the boys could not possibly see the movie that night. The silent boy was looking incredibly nervous. The tall boy started talking soothingly, assuring Bethel that they couldn't get in his car unless he let them, and that they would just go to their mother's house and then the boys would be gone before you know it. Bethel realised his hand was on the door's lock and that he started to open it. He jerked his hands away violently, then looked back up at the tall boy and tried to explain his action. In the moment he had pulled his hand away from the lock, Bethel had broken eye contact with the tall boy for the first time in the conversation. Now when he looked back, he saw what he had failed to notice to this point. The eyes of both boys were just coal black orbs with no iris or pupils. Can you imagine? I think I'd just headbutt them. The silent boy now had a horrified look on his face. Bethel guessed that the look on his own face had given away his discovery. The tall boy was now clearly angry, but continued to ask Bethel to let him in the car. "We won't hurt you, you have to let us in. We don't have a gun." That was enough for Bethel. The car was still running. He'd never turned the engine off when he initially parked. As Bethel reached for the gear shift, the tall boy started to yell in anger with a touch of panic that Bethel had to let him in the car. They could not enter unless Bethel told them they could. He slammed the car in reverse and tore backwards out of the parking lot, and the boys were gone, and the sidewalk near the theatre was deserted. Sometime after his strange encounter with the two black-eyed children, Bethel called a friend of his named Chad, who he'd gone on ghost hunts with previously. Chad had two female friends with him, both of whom claimed to have psychic abilities. Bethel started to describe his encounter when one of the women stopped him early on in the narrative to ask if the children had black eyes. What was that bang? I live in flats, so it's definitely not black-eyed children, but that still freaked me out. Intrigued, Bethel admitted that they did, then asked why she asked. The woman, a week earlier, had a dream about children wanting to be let into her house. And though it took a little while for her to realise it, the children had black eyes. She kept her house locked up tight. She intuitively felt that if they were let into her house, they would kill her. In finishing the story, the woman told Bethel that had he let them into his car, they would have killed him too. It's so weird. So that's the first story. I will link the video to the man actually telling this story, the guy who it happened to. And it does look super convincing. Obviously, he could just be lying and this whole thing could just be a massive urban legend. But there are so many people around the world that have experienced this. And it seems like it's just weird, isn't it? Like if you've experienced something and then someone else experiences exactly the same thing, but down to the detail of the child having black eyes and wanting to be let into the house, that's a very specific thing. It could be an urban legend, it could be real. So this next story is by Anonymous. So I embarked on a quest. I'd show people just how unscary these things were, whatever they were. Who knew if black-eyed kids were a real thing? I'm the kind of person who needs to see it for myself. I began doing a lot of research online. I looked at the paranormal sites, I watched scary videos on YouTube about black-eyed kids, and from everything I gathered, they found you, you didn't find them. And it seemed like it was pretty much just by chance if they did find you. So what was I going to do? I came up with a plan. I began putting up an anonymous ad on Craigslist. It read, "Black-eyed kids. I am not afraid of you, I want to meet you, 9 p.m. Wednesday. The park bench on the corner of 3rd and Washington. Show me why I'm wrong and why I should be afraid." The bench was only like a block from my apartment, so every Wednesday I would walk down there and see if anyone or anything came by. I usually wouldn't sit there, I'd stand back and watch. I'm not stupid. I may not be afraid of black-eyed kids, but I know the internet can attract some nuts. And it did, occasionally. Nothing exciting enough to write about. There were a couple of pervs and some teenage kids joking around. So this went on for 6 months and then I stopped posting the ad. The week I stopped, I got a knock on my door. I was sitting on my couch and it was little after 9 p.m. I don't know how to explain it, but the second I heard the knock, my skin went ice cold. Ice cold. I didn't need to get up. I knew who it was, and much to my surprise, I was terrified already. I was wrong about not being afraid of black-eyed kids. The fear is on a different level, an instinctual, primal level. But still, I managed to get up and open the door, and yep, there was a kid, about 9 years old, olive skin, dark hair, solid black eyes staring up at me. "Can I come in?" he said. After what seemed like an eternity, I responded with no, and I began closing the door. "We missed you at the park tonight," the boy said. I stopped closing the door. I looked at him, my mind racing. They've been watching me. The boy smiled up to me. It took everything I had to make my arm move again, pushing the door closed and locking it. As soon as I shut the door, I gasped for air. I hadn't been breathing. I sat back against the wall facing the closed door. Knock, knock, knock. He was still there. I waited. Nothing. It took me at least an hour to move from that spot, staring at the door. I didn't sleep that night or the next night. Eventually I collapsed with exhaustion at my desk at work, only to be awakened minutes later by a nightmare memory of the boy. It's been 6 months. I can't explain the fear that washes over your body when you see the eyes of these kids. And the state of your mind, the way your body wants to listen to what they're telling you, what they're asking. I thought if I told you my story, it would help me get over what happened and warn others. I'm positive these kids are evil, and people they meet who can't resist whatever power they wield. I don't think we ever hear from those people again. I now avoid that corner park bench with everything I have, and I don't tell anyone why. People think I'm crazy sometimes, walking 3 blocks out of the way just to make sure I don't go near it, but you'd be the same if you went through what I did. Black-eyed kids are nothing to mess with. That story is terrifying. Can you imagine if that happened to you? It sounds mad, it sounds mental, it's like I don't believe it, but at the same time, just for 2 seconds with me right now, imagine if that happened. Imagine if that was real. Imagine if all of this stuff is real. Like, I believe in ghosts, I've seen them. Black-eyed kids is a different thing. It sounds like they could be from another planet. It sounds like they could be, I don't know, like Edward Cullen stuff, make you kind of do whatever they want. Oh, that's Dracula, innit? But Dracula shit, making you do whatever they want you to do. What happens to those people that do meet them and can't resist what they're telling them to do? The thing is as well, I feel like with this kind of thing and these kind of cryptids, they're called cryptids. These kind of cryptids they're like creatures. So it's kind of like, I guess, Bigfoot, Loch Ness, all that stuff. Except these black-eyed children want to do you harm, like want to hurt you. I think in life we can choose to either believe, be not sure, or don't believe, right? There are 3 categories. The reason I am more likely to fit into the I believe, I think, is because I've experienced things before. If you haven't experienced things, it's hard to believe that these things exist. But for me, because I have experienced paranormal things happen, you know, you can't, in my head, I can't dispute aliens, I can't dispute fairies, I can't dispute anything, because we assume we know everything about the world, and it's so mad to me that, like, people think that aliens don't exist, people think that these things aren't real, but it's like, you don't know anything. We don't know anything. We don't know anything about the world, really. We're just here. We don't even know why we're here or how. Really? I mean, you know, there is science and stuff, which, yeah, I get. But you know what I mean? It's like this whole universe, oh, it's getting really deep. Just where did it come from? And now there's black-eyed kids roaming about, knocking on your door, being like, hi. On the other hand though, it could be a creepypasta, and if you don't know what a creepypasta is, it's basically like, so, you know, Slender Man, and that, if it's like a cyber type legend story. So yeah, it could be that, but I don't know. And now I'm scared if that door gets a knock. A child, the first thing I'm gonna do is kick it in the face. And I suggest that's what you guys do as well. We are not about to be killed by these little children with black eyes. So that's the end of today's video. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, ring the bell. Let me know in the comments below what you think about black-eyed kids. Also, what your view is on that deep universal idea of we aren't alone and we don't know anything, pretty much. That's what I think. Give me your opinions. I'm so open to all opinions. about this topic because I think it's so interesting. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a nice day. I didn't even drink my tea. Do you know what? That's the right temperature though. Anyway, see you later.